Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update here on social media. Thank you as always for joining us this week. A lot of big documents coming out as a result of a lawsuit over what Fauci's agency was up to over there in China. You won't believe the documents, or maybe you will. Plus, I have an important update and ask of you in terms of protecting our military from the scourge of critical race theory. And I think I'll start with that. A few weeks ago, and it's worth talking about again, Judicial Watch exposed how cadets at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point were being indoctrinated with critical race theory propaganda. And as you know, critical race theory, you may not know this, just so you know, critical race theory is repackaged Marxism that uses race as a cutout to call for revolution, to attack and overthrow essentially the United States of America and Western civilization generally, because they think there's what they call systemic racism all throughout the West. And this is being force-fed our cadets at West Point. Also we uncovered that they were targeting the cadets with trainings on queer theory, which is a cousin, Marxist cousin of critical race theory, and of course feminist theory, radical feminist theory, which also seeks to destroy America by dividing us by sex, or as we're saying earlier, race and gender identity. And these records are pretty outrageous. They show, as I said, propaganda geared at attacking white cadets while suggesting that black cadets are victims and oppressed, and suggesting that based on the color of one's skin, you have certain characteristics. Now, obviously that's racist and discriminatory and is illegal, as best I can understand it, under any understanding of the laws that prohibit discrimination and disparate treatment based on race and other characteristics like that in schools, certainly in federal facilities such as West Point. Now, we know this is going on throughout the rest of the military as well. Certainly after we highlighted this issue at West Point, we heard from veterans all over the country concerned about it going on in the other military academies, whether it be at the Air Force Academy or the U.S. Naval Academy. And when you look at the documents, and they suggest that Black Americans are in the same state as Black Americans were during the slave times, it shows you how extreme and radical they are. And obviously, no American should have to go through this propaganda, let alone the rising leadership of our Army at West Point. And on top of that, you have the military targeting anyone who has conservative values. And one way they're doing that is by throwing out anyone who objects or raises religious objections or other practical objections to the needless and vindictive vaccine mandate that the Biden administration is foisting on our military. Now, I've seen numbers that range from 60,000 to 260,000, depending on the branch or the military generally. But just so you know, it's tens of thousands of people who are trying to serve in our military who are having their careers destroyed, or they're being thrown out of the military because of their refusal and their concerns about the vaccine mandates. Now, many of them have religious objections, and virtually none of those religious objections have been granted by the military, which suggests an anti-religious bent by the Biden leadership in the military. So you have this attack on our military from within with this outlaw critical race theory propaganda, this suggestion that anyone who is white in the military is to be distrusted, and also the attack on our military, the decimation of our military caused by this vaccine mandate. And as far as I'm concerned, the President of the United States is betraying the troops in his care. The military leadership are betraying the troops in their care by A, pushing this vaccine mandate, and B, pushing this critical race theory and what they call anti-racism, which is a way of saying being pro-critical race theory. So they never really want to call it critical race theory. Of course, they do in West Point because they haven't figured out how to get the words out yet. But it's a radical extremism. Now, how can this be stopped? Well, you can stop it by having it defunded, by having Congress pass appropriation measures that prohibit spending on this type of abuse of our military, whether it be prohibiting the vaccine mandates or otherwise protecting the troops from these racist, discriminatory trainings that they are forced to go through, whether it be at West Point or elsewhere. Now, there's an opportunity to do that right now, practically speaking. There is what is called the National Defense Appropriations Act, or the Authorization Act. NDAA is the short term, it's the shorthand for it. And it's under consideration. I think it may already have passed the House. Of course, the leftists in the House didn't want any restrictions on this critical race theory training. Obviously, they didn't want to stop abusing the military in terms of forcing them to go through a vaccine mandate. Now, and my understanding is it's before the Senate. So this is what I think you should do. You should let your senators know what you think of these vaccine mandates. You should let your senators know what you think of our military, both those who are actively serving and those being trained to serve, who are in West Point and elsewhere, being force-fed this critical race theory propaganda. And let them know this is important to you. Because if they had their druthers, and I mean both Republicans and Democrats, they'll just, pass the bill, pass the general funding measure with no restrictions. And our military will be abused, and tens of thousands of serving men and women will be thrown out. So this is an opportunity to share your concerns. And I would encourage you again also to call the House. Now, to get to your members of Congress, all you have to do is dial one phone number, 202-225-3121. That's 202-225-3121. You can ask for your senators at that number, or you can ask for your House member at that number as well. It's the Capitol operator. Now, it's the internet, so you can also look up the phone lines directly of your members of Congress. You can call them here in Washington, D.C. You can also call them at your local their local offices. So they're usually they have satellite offices in the districts. The senators do as well. And they want to hear from you. Don't think they don't want to hear from you, even if you think they will vote the wrong way. It's important you let them know what the concerns are here. Everyone says, does it matter if we call? Does it matter if we write? It does matter. I've been doing this work here at Judicial Watch for 24 years now. And believe you me, calls and what people are calling about are valuable intelligence to the politicians on the Hill. They want to know what people are concerned about. And if people start calling about a particular issue, whether it be Democrat or Republican, they're very interested to know about it. And they vote and tailor their rhetoric and other activity accordingly. So it can have an impact not only by showing support for members and senators who may agree with you, but also saying to someone who may disagree with you, this is the way I want you to vote. And they may not vote the same way, but they may change their attitude a little bit or be a little less strident or, frankly, a little less active to move this garbage along if they know there are a lot of people who oppose it. So I encourage you to let your senators and congressmen know what you think about their effort to, in my view, whitewash this critical race theory training and the vaccine mandate. Now, in the meantime, Judicial Watch will continue to expose what's going on in our military. We've got more FOIAs out already. And of course, Judicial Watch is second to few in pursuing this issue at a national level. We've been working with to try to get records from school boards and individual schools, working with parents directly, representing individuals who have been targeted for objecting to this extremism or targeted for just voicing an opinion on a leftist outrage and getting fired as a result. We've got litigation in that regard. What's important to remember about this critical race theory propaganda and this big push is that it's completely at odds with decades of anti-discrimination law, and more importantly, our Constitution, the 14th Amendment, which guarantees you equal protection of the law, no matter your race or your sex. Now, the left has been trying to tell us for years, oh, they're opposed to discrimination on the basis of race. They're opposed to discrimination on the basis of sex. Well, in fact, critical race theory and the policies that flow from that show they actually support discrimination on the basis of race, support discrimination and targeting on the basis of sex, and all sorts of other characteristics they say that we're not supposed to think about when hiring or considering government policies and their or corporate policies. They want that type of discrimination. They want to blow up our constitutional protections. And we saw that in California, where the California legislature thought it was okay to pass 2 laws that mandated quotas based on, in one case, the one law required boards of directors to have a certain number of women on the boards, which meant that men couldn't apply for certain board memberships. Outright discrimination, quotas, outright illegal and unconstitutional. Same thing with the second law. They expanded it to include race, ethnicity, and sexual identity. Now, the real interesting thing about this is, and some of the judges in our cases noted this as well, what about people who identify? Because now, as you know, there's this big debate about whether you're, quote, you can identify as a member of a race as opposed to being, actually black or white, or whether you identify as a sexual, in terms of sexual identity or gender. You know all the debates there. How does that work in the anti-discrimination laws? What if a man decides they identify as a female? Does that fit in with the quota for this law that California tried to get through? Well, thankfully, Judicial Watch kind of ended that conversation because we sued to stop it. Both quota laws, and we had a trial of one of the laws, and the court just ruled outright on behalf in our other lawsuit, and we ended those quota mandates in California, which had at its basis critical race theory, because they allege systemic racism or sexism or whatever you want to call it. And recently, after losing, they came in and they asked the one judge in the one case, stay this. We want to keep on playing this game here of discrimination on the basis of, that particular case, race and ethnicity and gender identity. And the court said, no, they won and we're not going to stay it. It's illegal. And just this week, we were in court again. The state of California came in to, again, advocate for discrimination on the basis of sex. And the court said, no, we had a trial and it's not going to get stayed. So you're out of luck. So another good victory there. So this is a really broad effort by Judicial Watch, and it's comprehensive. And there's nothing comparable that anyone else I'm aware of is doing in terms of exposing it at the school level, exposing it in the military, exposing it and challenging it directly when you've got mandates literally in California for it. So some good news there. So, these fights where we win, we beat California over their race, sex, and other quotas, but they keep on coming back to try to challenge that victory or get it overturned. So internal vigilance is the, what is it? That's the price of liberty, right? And it's the price of freedom, and that's what we're doing. And we do it with your support. And it shows you that there's the heavy lifting has to go on, not just for one trial, not just for one FOIA request or one FOIA lawsuit, but for months and years, because the left never stops. And the rule of law is always under attack. Our Constitution is always under attack. And Judicial Watch is proud to stand in the gap there, thanks to your support. Now, Judicial Watch is also the national leader in trying to figure out the truth behind the scandals around COVID-19, whether it be the origin of the underlying virus, the vaccine controversies and the government's handling of issues related to the vaccine. Judicial Watch has been second to none in filing Freedom of Information Act requests and getting access to documents through those requests and lawsuits, because Fauci and his people don't want to give us the information, so we have to sue their agencies in federal court. So pretty much everything you know about the Wuhan Institute and Fauci and what he's been up to is thanks to Judicial Watch. Let's be clear, it's thanks to Judicial Watch. Now, did we uncover everything? No. But pretty much everything that you think you know about what was Fauci, how much money did they give the Wuhan Institute? We got that out. How much money was Fauci getting paid? What was his job title and description? Oh, we got that out. Well, what were the concerns about the vaccine? Were there any issues with the way it was being tested? And what did the studies show about things that people should be concerned about related to the vaccine? Oh, we got that out through Freedom of Information Act requests. And I encourage you to go to our website and look at them, the various documents we've gotten, because there are thousands of documents that we're talking about here. And I'll go through some of the background on what we've been able to get out a little bit later. But most recently, we were able to get out information as a result, as I said, of Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. So this was not voluntarily disgorged to Judicial Watch. We had to fight for it. It took over 2 years to get this information. And it turns out, according to new documents given to us by the National Institutes of Health, the infamous Fauci agency grant that benefited in part the Wuhan Institute was the subject of an FBI inquiry. Now, you may recall that Fauci and his ilk were saying, oh, there's nothing to worry about. There was no gain of function research. Why would anyone be worried about this grant? Well, the FBI was worried about the grant because the documents show back in March of 2020, they had an inquiry about the grant. Other documents show that the Fauci's agency was very much concerned about gain of function research at the Wuhan Institute and for the grant, the larger grant generally, as far back as 2016. Now, what is gain of function research? Essentially, it's taking a virus or a biologic some way of some sort and making it more virulent, making it more likely by genetic or other manipulation to be dangerous to human beings, or infectious for whatever other purpose that the researcher thinks it's useful. Now, the thinking is, if we know what the virus can do, if it's made more infectious, we'll be able to protect ourselves against it. Well, A, that's dubious logic, but B, it's also quite dangerous, because if the virus is made more infectious and gets out, do I need to tell you how dangerous that is? And of course, that's the concern about what was going on at the Wuhan Institute. They were engaged in gain of function research related to the bat coronavirus. That's not in dispute, because Judicial Watch got the document showing it was gain of function research that was going on. It's been confirmed by Judicial Watch FOIA requests. And the thinking is, was this COVID-19 a man-made virus? Now, has it been conclusively proven it's a man-made virus? No, there's a big debate in the health community about it. But it used to be that if I said this a year ago, I would have been knocked off of YouTube, because they were interested in covering this up to help Fauci, to help China, and to make life miserable for Trump back in 2020. The censorship was so evil and corrupt in that regard. Now I guess I'm allowed to talk about it. So not only was this a FBI inquiry, but it shows back, as I said, back in 2016, they knew that there was a gain of function issue with this EcoHealth Alliance, which was the nonprofit organization that was getting this funding and then dispersing it to the Wuhan Institute and other places in China and abroad. The documents also show that the EcoHealth people didn't want documents turned over under FOIA, and they were saying, because of January 6th. How do you like that? using the controversy of January 6th as a reason to withhold information about what government money was being used for in terms of creating potentially dangerous viruses? Jeez Louise. Now, you probably haven't heard about this yet, have you? Right? You're hearing about it for the first time, unless you saw our press release about it. Ask yourself why you haven't heard about it. Don't you think it's big news that the FBI was investigating Fauci? Well, not him directly, but his grant. What's the status of that investigation? We don't know. Don't you think the media should be telling you about that if it were honest? Obviously, it's not. This is why Judicial Watch's work is so essential, because we give you information the media purposely withholds from you about what your government's up to. We are the citizen watchdog par none. This is the big email. Maybe we can put it on the screen. So you can see it's heavily redacted. Most of it is just blacked out. The email was dated May of 2020, and its subject line is Grant Questions, FBI Inquiry. And Ashley Sanders, a senior investigative officer with the NIH Division of Program Integrity, within the NIH's Office of Management Assessment, emails an agent in the FBI's Newark field office to inform him that in preparation for our call on Tuesday, we've provided responses, and I've taken out a few names there to make it more sensible to you. I've provided responses to your initial questions below. Guess what? They didn't give us the responses to the questions. So you have the Biden administration, and particularly Fauci's agency, the NIH. His agency is a sub-agency of the NIH, National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, I think is the official title. Also copied on the email was someone in the office of director for NIH, Francis Collins at the time. So they're hiding from us the nature of the FBI inquiry, citing deliberative process privilege. Now, deliberative process privilege, that's purely discretionary. It's not like secret information. They don't want to share this information because it might harm the deliberative process of the government. And we've known before in this litigation, because this litigation has been going on for some time, that the government has because the government has told us that one of the reasons it takes forever and a day for us to get these documents is, as I said, we began asking questions about what was going on with the Wuhan Institute and funding for it back in April of 2020. What's today? Where are we? In the middle of July? So we got these documents a few weeks ago. 2 years and a federal lawsuit. And one of the reasons they're telling us they can only give us the documents in dribs and drabs and still heavily redacted is because Fauci and his people have to personally review them. So yes, Fauci's responsible in part, I don't know for delaying this particular batch, but for delaying key documents about what his agency was up to in China. Documents that Judicial Watch has uncovered that have blown out of the water all of his dishonesty about what was going on. And we know from the grant numbers referenced in the FBI inquiry email that they were specifically looking at the mother of all grants in terms of COVID-19, understanding the risk of bat coronavirus emergence. That was the grant they were all nervous about as funding gain-of-function research in China and perhaps causing COVID-19. They were worried about it. They pretended they weren't, and we've talked about it before, and you've probably seen it elsewhere. I know Rand Paul's been talking about it, but they were pretending they weren't and telling the public that, oh, no, don't worry about it. They were very worried about it behind the scenes, the documents show. The records reveal several indications, as I said, of gain-of-function research, as well as failures to comply with reporting regulations, including a May 9th, 2016 email marked high importance, in which an NIH official notes Peter Daszak, and he's the top official at EcoHealth, his failure to file a progress report on this bat coronavirus research. This is the second communication from NIAID, Fauci's agency, requesting that you file a progress report for the above referenced grant that was due no later than April 15th. So this is almost a month later. Please submit the delinquent report by May 12th. Please be advised that continued late submission of your non-competing grant progress report and any subsequently requested documentation will result in a reduction of time and/or funds for this grant. Non-compete. So that means this was a special grant. Sometimes grants are competitive in the sense that you've got more than one applicant seeking the one pot of money. Well, this was a special grant only for EcoHealth, according to this email. And they weren't even complying with the basic rules because back in 2014, gain of function research was, because of the issues I've raised, because it's so darn dangerous, it was severely limited. Severely limited. And here it became obvious that they had concerns about it. So this email gets sent saying, you're not giving us a progress report on this grant. And they also send us someone else's email who's attached to this email. So you get all these email chains. And another NIAID official says, hey, look, they have proposed work for the next years of the award that may be subject to the gain of function funding pause. So they're not getting reports on what they're up to. And their guy warns their colleague, Fauci's guy warns another Fauci person, hey, they're going to be getting into gain of function, it looks like. And then they get an admission from EcoHealth that says, we received a warning that one of the publications listed from the past year is non-compliant. Well, what was it non-compliant with? Gain of function? That's what it suggests based on the email traffic. And then later in the month, we have additional confirmation. And this is 4 years before we find out about COVID. In a letter dated May 28, 2016, from NIH official Jenny Greer to NIH program manager Eric Stemme, who had been involved, who already knew about this gain of function scheme that was coming up. The officials advised this EcoHealth chief of staff person who has said, yeah, we had a problem, that the NIH grant for the Wuhan Bat Project may include gain of function research that is subject to the U.S. government funding pause issued on October 17, 2014. They added that this pause was based on the following line in the grant application. So they told them they were doing gain of function research. And the line was AIM 3, testing predictions of COVID interspecies transmission. So this is Fauci's agency looking at this grant application and recognizing that gain of function research was taking place or was being proposed. And this is also confirmation that Fauci's agency was told that it likely had taken place already, despite the funding prohibition. June 2016, the DASIC Award, the EcoHealth Award, may have GOF, gain of function. And I've been in touch with the grants management specialist for a while now. So this is percolating years before we find out about COVID, and years before we find separate email traffic, and we hear about these phone calls and such, where they're all nervous about this grant and want the details on it because they recognize that if it was involving gain of function research, it was involving the Wuhan Institute, then it could have involved the creation of COVID-19, if indeed COVID-19 turned out to be actually manufactured as opposed to naturally occurring. And it wasn't just the Wuhan Institute that was getting money from this grant. This is the dirty little secret. Who knows who else was getting gain of function research money? Well, actually we do, because we've got the sub-awardees as a result of this FOIA lawsuit. The Wuhan Institute of Virology in China, the Institute of Pathogen Biology in China, a Duke NUS in Singapore, a clinic in Burma, an entity in Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos. And East China Normal University, China, is listed as a consultant. So all of this involved, according to the documents, gain-of-function type research potentially. And if we've disclosed previous, just in the last month or two, that there was a lot of gain-of-function research illicitly going on here in the United States as well, under what I call the public health deep state, whether it be the Department of Agriculture, the FDA, or NIH. And so, incredibly, despite all the controversy about gain-of-function research, the documents show that in August of 2021, which is, what, a year and a half, well over a year and a half after all this controversy emerges, Daszak goes back and asks for gain-of-function money again. It's not clear what money he got, but certainly there was money that we know was budgeted for China that had already gone out, because documents show at least, for instance, $66,000 of the award was budgeted for China specifically between the year 2014 and 2019. So why would they go back for more gain-of-function money in 2021? Because they knew Fauci liked it. Fauci keeps on defending it. And all of this is at odds with Fauci's testimony, where he was kept on saying that there was no gain-of-function research. Of course there was. First of all, we know he saw the grant application because he's copied on the email. I think he responded to it, detailing gain-of-function research. And we know his people in the agency knew that gain-of-function research was going on. You know, and another outrageous document is that the NIH is just trying to get information on the gain-of-function research from EcoHealth Alliance, which is responsible for it. And Daszak and people at EcoHealth write back saying, oh, well, it's going to be hard for us to get this from the Wuhan Institute because you're not giving us any money anymore. So they're holding hostage to public health to getting more federal money for their dubious research. And one of the reasons we weren't able to get some of these documents is because, at least in a timely way, the document suggests, is because the EcoHealth Alliance was throwing up all these objections. Daszak writes, because he wanted the NIH wanted biosafety reports from the Wuhan Institute, given the intense geopolitical pressure around the accusations that the Wuhan Institute of Virology intentionally or accidentally released SARS-CoV-2, something which the WHO mission deemed extremely unlikely. And what's interesting, of course, is Daszak doesn't say that, oh, by the way, when you hear expert opinions that it was unlikely that it was engineered, I was involved in coming up with some of those expert opinions, even though he had the conflict. He said obtaining such information from the Wuhan Institute that he funded using our tax dollars is not a plausible option at present. This is in January 2021. And in responding and processing, because NIH wanted some help from EcoHealth in responding to our FOIA request, and they said that as demonstrated by the recent attack on the U.S. Capitol fueled by disinformation and conspiracy theories, the need to protect the privacy of EcoHealth Alliance employees and affiliates is more important than ever. So here you have the slow rolling of documents using January 6th as an excuse. Outrageous. And they still, in April, hadn't provided all the information they needed according to the documents. So this is pretty incredible stuff. And I just gave you, frankly, a taste of it because we have 1,651 pages. I can't go through it all here. Our press release as it is 8 pages. Initially, it was double that. So there's a lot more in the documents, and I encourage you, dear listener, dear viewer, to go on our website and look at the documents and see what else is there and share the wealth and share the information. Do crowdsourcing analysis of the documents Judicial Watch has uncovered. Now, as I said, Judicial Watch has been second to none in trying to get information out. We showed that the funding money given to the Wuhan Institute generally, at least made available for the Wuhan Institute, was $867,000. Judicial Watch got that information out initially, a lot more than had been previously known. But Judicial Watch figured out what was going on thanks to FOIA. They had 9 China-related grants to EcoHealth Alliance. Judicial Watch uncovered that. And in this batch of records that talked about the grants, they included an email from a top official at the Wuhan Institute asking for help finding disinfectants for decontamination of the suits they use to deal with the biologics and indoor surfaces. They didn't know how to keep the place clean. What a nightmare. HHS records included an urgent for Dr. Fauci email chain citing ties between the Wuhan lab and the taxpayer-funded EcoHealth Alliance. The government emails also reported that the foundation of U.S. billionaire Bill Gates worked closely with the Chinese government to pave the way for Chinese-produced medications to be sold outside China and, quote, help raise China's voice of governance by placing representatives from China on important international councils as a high-level commitment from China. So here we have interesting documents not only about the guilty knowledge, in my view, about the EcoHealth Alliance and Wuhan Institute funding by Fauci, but interesting information showing that the Gates Foundation was essentially, it looks like according to these documents, acting hand in glove with the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist government, to advance the interests of the Chinese Communist government. Incredible stuff. Again, we got the underlying gain-of-function research application, grant application, that confirmed that they were funding gain-of-function research, despite what Fauci's telling you. And we've got all this stuff on the vaccines that that will shock you as well, that raise questions about how its safety was verified and validated by the companies promoting them. I encourage you to go to our website and read about that. So as I point out, no one's doing more than Judicial Watch to get information about this. Now, I don't know what the FBI is doing to get back to the beginning. Again, the headline is the FBI had been, at least at one point, investigating the infamous Wuhan grant by Fauci's agency. Is the FBI still doing it? Well, they ought to be. Because if they weren't supposed to be using this money for gain-of-function research. It turns out they were. And in my view, that's evidence of fraud. Who knew what and when about this fraud? And when you look at the testimony of Fauci, to me, at least, he's being dishonest. That ought to be under investigation. As I say, this incredible disclosure of an FBI inquiry shows that Fauci and others involved in this scandal were being dishonest in dismissing the seriousness of questions about their cover-up of their funding of dangerous gain-of-function research in China. Any FBI inquiry would be appropriate, as these documents extracted by Judicial Watch after years of stonewalling also show that Fauci's agency knew and should have known, going back to 2016, that it funded dangerous and prohibited gain-of-function research in China. Now, I don't trust the FBI, but they're the only agency that's supposed to be investigating crimes at the federal level at this stage of the game. So there's got to be some accountability here. Now, hopefully, as a result of these Judicial Watch disclosures, there'll eventually be more pressure to engage in this accountability. So I encourage you, when you're calling your members of Congress and communicating with them, say, are you following what Judicial Watch is doing on Fauci and company? And if they're not, they should be. Because if they had their druthers, they'd do this funding again. They'd do this research again. Now, because I mentioned COVID-19, And despite the fact I quoted documents, government documents, what happens is if you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook or a lot of the other big social media platforms, it is likely there is a label that is vandalizing this video that suggests that to get the real truth on COVID, click here. So suggesting that what we're saying is not right and encouraging suppression and kind of scaring people from sharing it. So if you think this information is valuable, I encourage you to share, comment, and like, in any way appropriate, depending on the platform, to get the word out to overcome the suppression of information like this from big tech media, from big tech social media that have become agents of the government in terms of suppressing information about government corruption by groups like Judicial Watch. And again, I encourage you to support Judicial Watch. If you think this information is important, I think it's important. COVID's killed millions of people. The left has used it to try to destroy Western civilization, to be blunt. These vaccines are a whole other ball of wax. And so we're going to ask questions about COVID-19, its origins, how things were handled in terms of managing the epidemic and pandemic, and how these vaccines were approved and how are they being pushed. We have a right to as much information as we can get about COVID-19 and the safety and efficacy and other background on these vaccines. And we're going to keep on pushing. And if you think that's important, I encourage you to go to our website at judicialwatch.org, find out more about this information, and support our work. And so, and I don't mean that by just sharing it. I mean that give us a donation. We can't do it without your support. So with that, I wish you the best. I hope you have a great week, and I hope to see you here next time for the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.